What's going on, guys? It's Josh Kirchner from the Dialed In Hunter. Today we're going to be talking about something I am super passionate about, and that is backpack hunting. I wrote a dang book about it. Go check it out. It's called Becoming a Backpack Hunter, a beginner's guide to hunting the backcountry. It's available on Amazon. Today what we're going to be really diving into, though, is how to backpack hunt in dry conditions. All right, I've been an Arizona resident for over 20 years. I've backpack hunted in Arizona for over 10 of those years. So throughout that time, I've had to get creative, and I've learned a thing or two about how to stay hydrated in the backcountry. When I was first starting out and I wanted to go on a backpack hunt, that was one of my biggest concerns, and it's a huge concern for other people starting out, especially if you live in a state like mine where water is just not around every corner. But it's no reason to not do a backpack hunt. I decided I was just going to find a way, and that's what I did. So today I'm going to run through some tips and tricks I've found throughout the years for how to find water in the planning phase, what to do if there's no water in the area that you're planning to hunt, or at least a reliable water source for you to filter out of, and then I'll run through some useful gear items that I've come across that have helped me successfully backpack hunt in arid environments like Arizona. So the first thing you're going to need to do is a little bit of homework. Okay, ahead of your hunt, you're going to need to spend a lot of time looking at topographical maps and really researching where water is labeled on a map. Okay. Whether it's creeks, springs, ponds, lakes, whatever it is, you need to spend time learning those areas. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll dive into onX Maps and I will drop pins. Now, once I've picked an area to hunt, right? Okay, once I've picked an area where I'm like, okay, this looks like it has all the features that I want out of a hunting area. It also looks like there's several water sources in this area I should say potential water sources. Remember that. That I could potentially get to and filter water out of. Also, these are great for animals too, obviously. I'll mark pins on those water sources just so I can have a quick view of where those are on the map. By doing this, it gives me a clear picture of where the majority of the water is. Also, it gives me a better idea of where I could potentially camp. Okay. You don't want to be camping 5 miles away from water, right? That's just not practical. And we'll talk about that more later. But if there's a good water source, camping super far away from it doesn't make any sense. So finding, whether it's a spring in the bottom of a canyon, a pool of water, whatever, if there's some good camping areas around that, I will mark pins on both the water, obviously, and potential flat spots where I could set up a camp that is in a practical area for me to get to that water to filter. It could also be along a glassing route. I've done that too in the past. I've been like, okay, well, this is going to be my route today. I'll go along this trail here and glass along the way. By the way, when I get to this section here, I can filter water. So that's something I've done in the past as well. Once I've done that, I will then dive into Google Earth. Okay, and there's a really cool feature that you can use on Google Earth called the timeline feature. All right. Now, the water has to be visible for this to work. Okay, some springs are just not visible from satellite imagery. They're just not. They're tucked away in a thick cut somewhere, and you can't see them. But if we're talking a pool of water, okay, that is naturally built up in the bottom of a canyon, or we're talking a creek or something like that, you can zoom in on Google Earth onto those areas and use a feature called a timeline feature. Now, what I'll do is I'll jump into the timeline feature and I will push that timeline back to what I feel is the driest time of year. All right, so for us in Arizona, usually the driest time of year is June. So if I go back to June and I can still see, like actually see that water in the bottom of that canyon, or a water tank or whatever it is, I can physically see that water right there on the map, that means that that water is probably a pretty reliable water source if there's still water there in June. These are high areas of interest for me. Another thing that I'll do in order to research water is I'll actually go on hiking forums and stuff, backpacking forums. People will lay out their trip logs and talk about, you know, oh yeah, this spring had water in it. I filtered here and it says they did that in October, right? Like there's dates and everything. So you can go and research stuff like that. I do that a lot. And that'll also test the reliability of said water source. Everything I've laid out so far are all things that you can do ahead of your hunt without even stepping foot out your front door. You're essentially e-scouting for water. And you can accomplish a whole lot by doing that. I do it all the time. It gives me a very good picture of what is more likely to be a reliable water source and what is not likely to be a reliable water source. At the end of the day, though, when the rubber meets the road, the absolute best thing to do is you really need to go and proof the water yourself. And what I mean by that is you just need to go hike in to the spot and check the water, okay? To check if the water is actually still there. This is something that I have done, you know, 2 weeks ahead of a hunt. It's something I've done in intervals in the past. So maybe I'll go 2 months before my hunt, then I'll go a month before my hunt, and then 2 weeks before the hunt to try to see, especially if the water was like not super big to begin with and you're kind of iffy on it. It's good to go and check that multiple times. Now, if it's a raging river, all right, where you're trying to go, or like a giant water source in the bottom of a canyon or something like that, like it's probably still going to be there. But the important thing is that you actually go and make sure that the water is there, because if you live here in Arizona, okay, you know, how many times have you looked at a water source on a map and then gone to it and it's been bone dry? You cannot trust, even with the Google Earth thing, man. The Google Earth thing gets you real close. It's a great tool, but at the end of the day, you really need to go and physically see the water if you can, okay, to go and make sure that it's still there, that you're going to have water to filter. Another thing to pay attention to while you're doing this is if you are going through a heavy drought, okay, like just recently, this past year, Arizona was in a real bad drought, okay, super dry. And it's something I've seen in the past. When that happens, and if you do find a reliable water source, like a good water source during a year like that, you can rest assured that that is probably a reliable water source every single year. Because if it's like that, if it's there and you can filter on a year that's bone dry in a lot of other areas, that means that area is regularly holding water, and you can that's something that you can more put your trust in, rather than just looking at a map and being like, oh, it says there's a spring right here. Don't do that. Okay. Another thing to do while you're notating all this is have backup plans. If a water source is on the sketch side, especially, it's what I mean is it's not like a big prominent water source. It's not flowing heavily. It's good to have backup plans that you can revert to if you show up to that spot and that water isn't actually there. Okay, so have backup plans on your water sources, and actually go and proof these water sources to make sure that you're going to have water to filter. So what do you do if there is no water, or at least not enough to sustain yourself out there? Or maybe there is water, but it's in the heart of where you're hunting. I've run into that in the past, bear hunting, especially in Arizona. If I know there's a pool of water in the bottom of a canyon, okay, but that's the only water around, I'm not going to drop down in there, because I don't want to muck that up with my scent and potentially drive the bears out of that spot. Okay, so in these situations, what we do is we'll pack water in. Okay, we'll either pack it in ahead of time and stash it, or we'll just pack it in with us when we're going in on our hunt. Okay, and what you can do if you're going to stash it, I've stashed stuff for a couple weeks ahead of time before. Pack the water in, put a camo tarp over it or something like that. I've used backpack rain flies, okay, to cover it up. Put your water in a bush, cover it up with a rain fly, just to kind of hide it better. And I've never had an issue with people finding it. I've never had critters get into it before, and there's always water sitting there waiting for me when I get to where I want to be. It's a little more work ahead of time, or during when you're hiking in, you have more weight on your back. But having the water, like knowing the water is there, and you don't have to filter it, is pretty nice, because it saves time actually on your hunt. You eliminate the time that it takes to have to go on a water run. You got to go hike to the water source, and then you got to spend time filtering, and then you got to hike back, right? Like, these things take time. So when you have the water already there, that just means more time for hunting. In terms of how much water to bring with, everybody's a little bit different here, okay? So this is really where, like, you need to pay attention. I used to keep a log of how much water I drank each day in order to find out how much water I actually needed. And this doesn't just include drinking. You need to pay attention to cooking as well. Boiling water, you're drinking coffee in the morning, making breakfast, eating dinner, all these things. Now, you can negotiate your way around using as little water as possible, but unless you're running a completely dry menu, and you're just consuming water for drinking, like you're just drinking water, you're going to need to take these things into consideration. So I would keep a log of that on my hunts. Even if I'm going on a scouting trip for the day, how much water did I drink, right? This will give you an idea of how much water you need in a day. Add in, look at the back of your freeze-dried or dehydrated meals. How much water do those take? How much water are you using for coffee or energy or, supplements or anything that you're bringing back there? And you'll be able to calculate roughly how much water you'll need back there. For me, that has usually rounds out at about 1 liter of water a day for drinking, especially if I'm not covering a lot of country. I'm sitting there glassing a lot. That doesn't include cooking and stuff, though. That usually takes up about 22 to 24 ounces of water for me. Coffee, breakfast, and dinner. So I know that I need at the minimum 3 liters of water a day. Okay, more preferably though, I'd like to have 4 or 5 liters a day. I just recently, it also depends on what time of year it is. Like for instance, like I just recently did a 6-day backpack hunt in Arizona for Coues deer. Packed all my water in. I think I brought 17 liters of water in with me, and that was like, I had a lot of water left over. And I was completely fine. I wasn't going thirsty throughout that entire trip. Some days I'd have multiple cups of coffee, it was plenty for me. But, I have a friend, who, the guy drinks water like a fish. He needs to, he starts cramping if he doesn't, so that's what I'm saying. You don't do what I do. Okay. Here, like, you need to pay attention to how much water you need. And then that'll give you a better idea of how much water to actually bring in with you. There are a few things, gear items that I have found to be extremely helpful, backpack hunting in arid environments. Okay, so first I'm gonna run through what I bring, my standard. Okay, like how I pack water around. Not talking about packing in extra water. Okay, so what I use in it all the time, no matter what state I'm in. This is just the desert kid in me. Okay, I run a 3-liter water bladder in my backpack. All right. And I'll also have a 1 liter Nalgene bottle in a Nalgene bottle holder on my hip, on my pack, okay? It's 4 liters of water, all right? Usually what I do is, if there is a water source around, what I do is I fill up totally, so I go in with 4 liters, okay? That Nalgene bottle usually stays back at my tent. All right, I just leave it in the vestibule or something like that, and it's there, you know, for when I get back to camp and I'm gonna cook dinner, and it's for, you know, for breakfast and stuff like that, and coffee. That's kind of how I run things out there. Additionally, though, okay, so when it comes to filtering, all right, when water's slim, a pump is the way to go, okay? So I use, this is a Katadyn Hiker Pro right here. You can use whatever pump you want, all right, but the point is to use a pump. I have filtered water with this thing out of $half-dollar sized holes in the ground. That is not practical for filters like a SteriPen, or where you need to fill up a bag for like a gravity fed system. If you do get in a pinch, a trick that I learned is if you can take your trekking pole apart, or you have some sort of tubing around, like some guys will carry like a little bit of tubing with them. You can stick that tube into the ground and kind of create a spout, and that will fill up your Nalgene or whatever, so you can use your SteriPen or whatever like that. But the most practical route that I've found is that water pump. I've just been in too many situations where I saw that a different kind of filter wouldn't be the best option. It wouldn't be the most efficient thing. So that is the route that I go. Now, in terms of carrying water in, okay, these things right here are super, super nifty. This is an MSR Drumlight bag. I'll open it up for you here. This is a 6 liter, okay? I will fill this up, 6 liters, okay, and I'll stuff it underneath the lid of my backpack. And that's how I'll hike into camp. So that Coues deer hunt I mentioned to you earlier. So I had 3 liters, all right, on like in my main bladder in my backpack, my Nalgene, okay, so that's 4 liters, and then that 6 liter underneath my lid, okay. So I could walk in with 10 liters of water right off the rip, and the first go around I actually walked in with 2 gallons of water in my hands as well. So that all rounded out, I think the math came out to like 17 liters or something like that. I could be off a little bit, but it was a lot of water. So they're super nice. I haven't had any issues with like durability or anything like that. They also make some more durable ones. A friend of mine packed water in for us back in October for a bear hunt, and the material of those water bags was almost like canvas like. It was very, very tough, but a little more heavy. You could also use these. I've used these in the past. These are little water bags from Platypus. They pack down super small. I like those 2 things, the Drumlight bag and the Platypus bags. They're just the most practical to me for backpack hunting. There you have it, guys. Backpack hunting in dry conditions. Just because it's dry, you're in an arid environment, does not mean you can't get into the backcountry. It just means that it requires a little more pre-gaming, right? Like a little more forethought to make it happen. Water is life. You know, water is a luxury. It really is. So you need to plan for that, and everything that I've laid out here has allowed me to successfully backpack hunt in Arizona consistently year after year. So if you have any more questions, please drop them down below and I'll answer them to the best of my abilities. If you're a backpack hunter, whether it's in Arizona or another dry state, and I didn't mention something here, I'm always trying to learn, man. If you got some knowledge to drop it down below. I'd love to hear what tips you have. If you like the video, please hit thumbs up. If you like the channel, please hit subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about backpack hunting, go check out my book, man. It's called Becoming a Backpack Hunter, A Beginner's Guide to Hunting the Backcountry. It's available on Amazon, and I'm super proud of how it turned out. I'll see you in the next video, guys.